And that's the thing is it's good stuff, man. And these guys, they have tremendous palates, and and this is where we've learned some of the stuff. We have the wares, they have the knowledge. We've been able to combine it, and this is what the 5-star drinking is.
Hey all, Amanda here, and welcome to another bonus episode of Great Beer Adventure. Now, if you remember the last time we had a bonus episode, it was filled with cuss words and a bit of randomness. If you don't recall that and are interested in listening, make sure you head over to greatbeeradventure.com/012 to hear it in all of its untethered glory. But as for today's episode, we recommend listening via headphones or when small ears aren't around, as things get quite a bit adult. We headed to Lovell, Maine, and we went deep into the cellar of Chris Lively's Ebenezer Pub. We invited a few other cellar dwellers to join us, and we try to get you a few tips and tricks for your own cellar. The number one rule seems to be to drink a good amount of beer. You can start your beer education by heading over to our show sponsor, Oak Hill Beverage in Scarborough, Maine, and working your way through all of the tasty beers that they have. It will take you some time as their selection is quite extensive. You can find their hours by going to oakhillbeverage.com. For now, prepare your ears for some explicit words and a lot of amazing beers. Amanda here, and welcome to another episode of Great Beer Adventure. Today we have another roundtable for you, and this time we are going to be talking about cellaring beer. And I figured the only place to really pay tribute to this theme, this topic, would be in the basement up in Lovell, Maine of Ebenezer's. Woo! Ebenezer's. A bar?
Pub.
It's not the pub.
It's everything, yes.
It's everything, right?
Yes.
Except the brewing, which is done
in Brunswick. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Everything happens here, and it's amazing. And there is literally dust on every bottle that I pass. There are just such an amazing thing going on here. But we're going to jump.
Fool you about what's inside.
Yes.
We're going to jump right into it, and we're going to start by going around the circle and having all the gentlemen introduce themselves to you. You want to start?
Sure. My name is Chris Libby. I'm just a home cellarer and beer enthusiast.
I'm Nick Evans. I'm the bar manager for the York River Landing and the Johnson Seafood and Steak in Northwood. I do have my own cellar, but I also get to play with the two states as well. But, it's been fairly modest, but we're getting there. Yeah.
Ed Josephson, cellar dweller. I age beer. Not on the large scale that we have down here, but kind of encouraged Chris a little bit in the early stages of cellaring.
Yeah, Ed's an OG. I'm Chris Lively, proprietor of Ebenezer's Pub out here in Lovell, Maine. Yeah, Ed was one of the OGs of cellaring beer, long before it was known as cellaring beer, and had some very early examples of Rochefort and Chimay and all that stuff, and we had a nice little collection ourselves, and Ed really helped us to take it forward.
Well, excellent. Our listeners have actually requested... We've got beer being poured. We are in a cellar filled with beer, so there is beer being poured. There are dusty beers on the bar that I'm quite excited to try out. And but today we have been requested to give you a show on some tips and tricks of cellaring beer. Before we get into that, why do you think that this is a thing? Why is cellaring beer? You're an old OG, Ed. Why do you think that cellaring beer is something that people do, or should do, even?
I don't know if it's necessarily something people can invest in doing, but It's important to know what you're starting off with a baseline. I mean, you can't just cellar something that you don't know what it tastes like fresh. You gotta have something to go with.
So try some beer out, and if it tastes good fresh, try it. Is that
Well,
what
there's
you're
only
saying?
certain types that you can actually cellar. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to cellar a hoppy beer, something that's supposed to be hop forward. It's kind of an important part of something like an IPA. So those are typically fresh is best. And I'm also a firm believer that breweries are doing their job correctly, the cellarmen are doing their jobs correctly when beer is packaged and ready to serve. So when they choose to package the beer, like, you can trust that the brewer thinks that it's worthy of you. Some things can be benefited by some cellaring. Things like spontaneously fermented beers, really big, rich imperial stouts can use some time to let flavors develop and meld. But it is kind of a precarious game. You do have to.
Just take a very small sip. Very
Thank you.
small sip. Save this.
Cheers.
Save it.
What
Save
are
it.
you What are you passing out right now, just so that our listeners know?
nobody's passing out.
This is 1988 Thomas Hardy's L, and we're gonna try this by itself, and then we're gonna try some Earth Monk by itself, and then we're gonna blend this and wake this up. I know you want to talk about some tips and tricks. We're gonna give you some tips and tricks from the pros, and we can even tell you the tips and tricks and where those actually came from, and the brewers that told us those tips and tricks. So these come from the pros. This is no bullshit. We've got bullshit too.
I'm not a big fan of cellaring coffee stouts and stuff like that because the coffee eventually is bitter.
Yeah.
It just cellaring it, I don't really see much advantage of actually aging coffee stouts at all. It just
Eventually, basically turns into a regular stout.
Yeah.
The coffee flavor fades really fast and
Yeah,
breaks
it's not
down
a-
and doesn't really turn into
I
much.
personally don't cellar much coffee.
There's definitely some
However-
I was gonna say there's definitely some
I
that
did 2011 CBS, and it was a year ago down here. That was outstanding. I thought it was good, but it was because it was properly cellared.
Right.
On the other-
Let's actually talk about that. So if you're thinking about cellaring a beer, putting it just in the cupboard probably isn't the best thing, right?
It's not a terrible place to start.
Okay.
You do want somewhere that's a little bit on the cooler side, preferably basements. Consistency of temperature is awesome.
dude.
There can be seasonal swing. That's okay, but it's the quick, sharp temperature changes that can really affect things quickly. Another thing I've noticed is larger format bottles can take a little bit more time to age. Like something like a 375 could age a little bit faster. So you want to be careful with that. I know a lot of people that can over cellar, where they kind of miss the peak of a beer.
Now this Thomas Hardy Ale is 6.33 ounces, and I don't even know how old it is.
Nip size, 88,
88.
26 years old.
Yeah.
Good math.
Wow. I was like, it's younger than me.
And then what we're drinking side by side with that, I believe, is 2009 Ardmonic Earth Monk. You have an English barley wine, and you have a Flemish Old Bruin here. I'm going to show you a trick, okay? So I told you to sip a little of the first one that I gave you, okay? I really don't want to even do this. It's so goddamn beautiful. But did you just taste those beautiful flavors? I mean, you even see a little bit of
So
tartness.
rich. Yeah, so rich. Dark fruit, like toffee.
Yeah, and some of the tart does.
Legend has it, if I remember correctly, the Eldridge and Pope yeast that they use for Thomas Hardy, I believe, and goddamn it, I could be wrong, I believe it comes from a champagnery in France. I believe Stroysa went there, clipped a grapevine, and was able to get the yeast, or they got the yeast for this beer. But regardless, it's the same yeast in these beers. God, I hope I'm right. And I know they use the Britannomyces DeVrickii. Is that how you
Delbrueckii.
Delbrueckii.
Yeah.
It's got that in it as well, which we all know is infectious as hell. But one of the things that you can do with aged beer is you take the old beers, you drink them, and you open up a fresh version side by side. You taste them.
Right.
You blend them. That was taught to me by Stroisa, Carlo. It's one of the first things he told me about talking about drinking West Veterland. So when he said that, the light came on. And another thing they showed me was being able to blend Thomas Hardy's with another beer, Earth Monk. And these two beers, when we combine these, the original Earth Nun was actually, I believe, a Panapot Reserva blended with Earth Monk, but this is a more upscale Earth Nun, and we do it with Thomas Hardy's. So this is the blend. So
sir.
where's your original that we tried? And we're going to wake it up now with Old Bruin. So we're actually blending barley wine with the Old Bruin. Here, we'll hit it. You actually reserve some. So
Oh,
where's your
that's a
barley?
Thomas.
Yeah.
Thomas.
And this stuff is great. And you want to roughly get about 30%
I
of...
already mixed mine, dude. I knew what we were up to.
Yeah, Ed's a veteran. But you want to get, Stroisa has this, if you're a big fan of them, you know about them in there. They call it the rule of three or the law of three, and that's what we do here, 30% blend over the 66%. And this is just a beautiful, beautiful blend. And it doesn't take a lot of sour beer to really get the point across, but you can certainly wake up older beers with this. It's a great technique that blenders and brewers have been using for years.
Now, touching on that, I've heard a lot about horizontals and trying on different
Right?
beers.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Fucking special.
There is a lot. There's specific beers on the West Coast that a lot of people look forward to every year that goes for countless dollars. It's incredibly collectible that I just think is an incredibly fucking shitty version of this. And God bless those breweries in America here that try to make it. But you can't copy this.
No, this is really
And this is the reason why when people bring these kind of versions, and I'm not going to name any of the beers, but I'm sure you guys can let your imagination go as to what beer I'm talking about. This is why, you don't want to be snobbish and you always want to look for the best in every breweries, but this is why it's hard. You don't want to look at American brewing and what they're doing. It is tremendous, and it's taking the world by storm, and it's really revolutionary, and it's very progressive. But there's something about those old-time classics, before all the math was dialed in, before 100% sterilization, when some of that stuff that necessarily wasn't good for you is what makes the product good. And here you can see two beers that have been cellared perfectly. You see them blended. This is what the art is.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that because we're here and I'm doing it. This is the difference between the bullshit and the real. And this was top, from Stroisa. These guys, they just did this because they have incredible palates. Carlo, when you hear the guy describe beer, I steal shit from him all the time in describing beers. Plum cake richness, filthy rich in the nose. Shit, my fucking Imperial Stout's filthy rich. But that's taken from his descriptions.
There's
the
so
guys.
much coffee in that too. It could age a little bit and still have.
Yeah, and the guy has a tremendous fucking palate. The guy brokered Chateau Petrus and Rothschild Wines, the two greatest wineries in the world. If that guy doesn't have a palate, you can't trust anyone if you can't trust him.
Yeah.
But what's amazing about Carlo, not only isn't it beer, lambic, and fucking wine, this guy drinks fucking Jägermeister, man, and gin and tonics, man. The
I
guy's
turned him on to
just,
that. He's like,
he's just,
Can I do for sore throat?
yeah, Jägermeister, man.
Jägermeister, bitch.
And and that's the thing is it's good stuff, man. And these guys, they have tremendous palates, and and this is where we've learned some of the stuff. We have the wares, they have the knowledge.
Right.
We've been able to combine it, and this is what the 5-star drinking is. We don't have the amount of arsenal that we used to have. Ed could tell you the amount of stuff that my staff and him and everyone else here we used to drink was, it sounds like bullshit if we told you what we used to drink out of this pub nightly. Those days don't exist anymore with, the times. But this is what this is the 1%. This is what the 5-star shit we talk about is when you get into this kind of drinking. This is what, this isn't what you're going to see on the forums. This isn't all the crap you can read in the magazines and all this other bullshit. This is what you want.
Yeah.
This is what you want. I own a goddamn brewery. If I could somehow make this, trust me and every other brewery in the world would, but you can't. You can only take two masters and use what they've created and make your own masterpiece with it. I mean, we're very, very, very lucky to be doing what we're doing right now. This is nice. I mean, it's special for me, and this is, this isn't, we just have the materials to do it. This is a Carlo Grotart and Urban Cuccio Streusa experience, and this is amazing, man.
It is very amazing. Now, back to the at-home cellar for a moment. The blending, would that work with people that every year went out and got a beer, so they try them independently year after year?
I'm going to tell you something that Ed can tell you, that Sean Hill can tell you, I can tell you, Tom Peters, Dirk, everyone. When you start selling beer, the first thing you're going to do is blow about $10,000 or $20,000 fucking dollars and creating a bunch of shit. If you really want to learn how to cellar, it is the only way. So if you want to open up this great cellar, I'm going to tell you, it ain't going to happen unless you drink a ton of beer. Cellaring is not something that these new kids with their parents' credit cards or someone who's not in it with their absolute heart are going to create it. You got to drink it.
You have to drink all
It's got to be organic. It's got to be somewhat accidental. You've got to love this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to fucking love it. And if you don't, fuck, the
just hide
cellar
it in
ain't
the
going to
corner.
happen.
You have to drink it.
Yeah.
You can't hide it in the corner all the time.
And
it's
definitely be
pretend
familiar with
it's
the beer that
gonna
you're
be
planning on
nice
cellaring,
down the
because
road.
there's no reason in trying to cellar a beer that
What?
you don't know what the flavor profile is like already, so you
Yeah,
have
why
no
bother?
idea
Why
to
bother?
judge where it
Yeah.
can be. But yeah, also don't cellar just to cellar. I pull out bottles just because I feel like pulling out a really nice bottle. Sometimes the day to drink a special occasion beer is you're opening that beer. That's a special occasion.
Yeah.
But there's the fun of doing a vertical is being able to drink something that's bright and fresh as it should be.
Horizontal.
Oh.
I meant vertical. Right?
Okay, well,
Yeah,
it depends.
technically, but it's okay.
Horizontal is probably actually a better fucking word than vertical.
because you're drinking them side by
Yeah,
side.
no
yeah.
shit. I think Amanda.
Well, I've always seen
Might
it
have
differently.
something here.
I've seen it as a vertical as multiple years of a beer. I've seen a horizontal as a grouping of different
Similar.
variants of
Similar
the same
beers.
beer. Like
Okay.
I was down for Hunapoo Day, so like having Hunapoo with double barrel with vanilla bean with Hunapoo. Funny name, but a real beer. But yeah, that's part of like the horizontal, and then the vertical is the multi-year. I know a lot of people who have differing ideas on the way to approach drinking things like that, especially the vertical. Like, do you want to start young or do you want to start old?
Right.
Do you want to know what the beer's like fresh right away, or are you already familiar with it, and then you can try different vintages? But part of the fun too is doing things like this, like blending up all those different years and doing different ratios to find the one that really speaks to you. Because in the end, beer is very subjective and it's very personal because it's your mouth.
Yes.
No one else knows what's going on in there. Your flavors are what you taste in that, and that's your experience. So part of the fun is trying to talk it out, trying to find the words to describe these things and find.
Yeah. But cellaring beer, I mean, if you're gonna take a serious approach about it, it is an incredible amount of hard work. I mean, there's no ifs, ands about it. You've got to be dedicated to drinking, and I mean seriously drinking at a very, very high level. So you've got to be able to drink. You need to be drinking Trappist beers. Yes, you need to be drinking Bigfoot. You need to be drinking OSA from Anchor every year, Sierra Nevada Celebration. If you haven't drank those beers and you don't know what those beers are, well, forget even cellaring. If you don't know what those beers are in and out as an American beer drinker, then you have no foundation as a drinker, because that's just absolutely one of the 4 building blocks of drinking. And you've got to know those. Yeah.
Do your
Make
homework and
friends.
feel free to leave your norm. If you don't know, you go to a bar and you see a list. It's like, well, I know all these breweries. I'm going to go to my standby. Well, don't try something you don't know that seems like that. You maybe read somewhere that it was a cellaring candidate or something to that extent, and you got to leave what you know and take some leaps of faith too. I've definitely bought 3 or 4 bottles of a beer, like, oh, I'm going to cellar this, and I drink it. It's like, well, this is doesn't taste like it's going to do that much to me. 6 months later, you try another one. It's like, yeah, it's pretty much the same. So you just end up drinking them all. You can pretty much know after 6 months whether or not a beer is going to change or how much it's going to change. And that gives you a good idea. So if you can buy, say, 4 bottles of each, try one fresh, try one in 6 months, and then you can go a year, and then you can go another year after that. Is because basically, I mean, generally speaking, other than like sours and these lambics that he has here, most stouts you're not going much past 4 or 5 years, anyways.
No, yeah, yeast autolysis and all that stuff's
If you had this shit over ice, dude, you'd be thinking you were drinking a fucking Pepsi, man, or a Coca-Cola. It's fucking gorgeous, man.
What is this?
2006
Fucking
Panapot.
2006 Panapot.
Wow.
Fucking goddamn, is that not beautiful?
So you
man?
and I were chatting a while ago about 2014
Yeah.
Panapot and how wonderful that was drinking after just
That
a
was
year
just
and change.
boss, man. And Ed was one of the ones to confirm it.
Oh yeah,
But that's also, that brings up a good point, too, is that some beers will be drinking better a year old than the 3-year-old version will be, too.
right.
Each year, different beers are going to be different. There's
Every year the beer is different. They're trying to hit a target flavor profile, but it's a different organic living
Right.
thing every time.
But the exploration of waking up an old beer with a new beer is so on point.
Yeah, it's so
No
classic
mustard.
Belgian. It's
But,
so classic Belgian.
You want to know this guy's fucking palate? I've got to interrupt here for a second, Evan. I'm telling you, dude, I gave this guy fucking West Vertland, right? And it was, this was years ago. When we first opened up, we're drinking West Vertland. I proceeded 6 months later to give this dude West Vertland that was 35 years old, okay? I'm like, what's in the glass, Ed? He's like, I've had this before. That's West Vertland.
Wow.
Boom.
Mic drop.
That's just natty. And I want to just go over one other quick thing. Strange things about, and I don't want to get off topic, but I've got to shoot this in here. I know you did a great job of editing, but weird things.
We're going to challenge that.
You want to hear some weird shit that's happened that defies science?
I'm thinking that there's not going to be much editing for this one. It's going to be tough to do.
But let me tell you, the original Ore beer, the black and white label that you've had twice with me. He's had them both times. They were corked originally, the bottles, and they were kind of big, looked like fucking spaceship dildos popped off, like the Eurig stick bottles.
Right.
Same kind of bottle, but a little bit bigger. You freaking pop this thing off. The first time I did, I poured one, and it was, flat. The beer was, I don't know, from whenever Ore beer first started. I don't know how old. I think Ed's pulling it up on Google right now. And it was flat, and it proceeded to
No,
carbonate.
this is the vortex.
But it proceeded to carbonate. After about 45 seconds to a minute, the beer started fucking carbonating in front of us. So fast forward a year, next dinner, he was at these dinners. We do the same thing again. And this isn't just me and Ed here. Now, we're talking every Ebenezer fan and everyone at these dinners we're all sampling this beer. I'll be damned if we, same beer, 2 years later, did the same thing. And I even called it before I opened it. Yeah, I'm like, let's see if this is going to do it again. And like David Copperfield, the damn thing did it again. And that's, you see some anomalies like that. So it's, I remember when we first started talking about yeast online and brewers and home brewers, because of science, said, you know what, yeast won't expand the life age of a bottled beer. It's just not possible, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, that's funny because brewers have been saying for years that it does. And I'm waiting for a brewer to come on this thread and tell me it doesn't. And no brewers came on. This is a big-ass thread on Beer Advocate.
Hold on 1 second. Just hit it. It'll work.
Oh, got it?
Thanks, Sal. Sorry about that.
Anyways,
Difficulties.
this was a big ass
Happens.
thread, and I knew everyone was looking at it, and I said, "Is there any brewers that are going to come on here and tell me that a beer sitting on yeast in a bottle won't age better than one that doesn't?" Now, the science damn well might say, you know what, that yeast is not going to do anything. If anything, minimal. It might, but the mythology, the legend of the brewers say that it does, and the science behind it does. And I'm going to tell you, and I'll be one of those people, regardless of what science ever exposes. If you tell me that there's yeast in that bottle, damn it, I say it's going to sell or better than one that doesn't have that yeast. Damn it.
Well, what's what wineries do? Surly,
Yeah.
which is on lease, and
Yeah.
they age usually white wines on lease
Sure.
on purpose
on the yeast, yeah.
for the fact that it ages and imparts flavors. So
Yeah,
I would, of course,
fermentation or
of
just
course,
the osmosis
I
will change it.
bottles with yeast. I can't say that I've seen any definitive 100%, but most of anything I've ever read has said what Chris just said, that yeast
Well,
helps.
there were some homebrewers that got some fucking information, and believe me, I've gone on and I have definitely said my fucking fair share of wrong shit. I'll be the first to say that.
That's part of learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But in this particular case, I just, I just knew, even if science says directly against it, I don't give a shit. Some of this stuff, it happens, and some of it I can't even explain. Like when you open up a beer and it's fine, it starts to carbonate. Maybe there's something scientific behind it, but weird shit happens in this cellar. You know what I mean? With beers, and I see some beers that
And
are
with
just
recording equipment.
yeah, but I've seen some beers that come here and they go oxidized, and then you come back and then that oxidation just leaves, aka Panapot 2006. I was a little afraid I was going to open this up, and boom,
Hey, wet cardboard.
so much oxidation has actually gone out of it, and you're seeing much more flavors protrude forward. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be sending Urban the batch number of this because I know he's going to be very curious about that, about us drinking it. But
You should, yeah. So cola.
yeah, it is, but that's the big one is you got to be, the cellaring thing, all the BS aside. I mean, it just comes down to just being incredibly dedicated. I mean, everyone here, we can do it, but I mean, you got to really be on it.
So let me just tell you about my cellar. I've got a lot of Bigfoot,
Yeah.
Yep.
and then I've got a bottle from when my daughters were each born.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yep.
And we're going to try to hold on to them until they're old enough to drink them.
Nice.
And that's it. And it's in a cardboard box under a tarp in the basement.
Man.
How does that sound?
It works.
It's fine.
because-
Works, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want it to. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now, and you obviously you want things to be slow with it, but there are, from the top cellars in the fucking world, the philosophies are so different. Okay.
Yeah.
There's some cellars that believe it needs to be in the dark, it needs to be at a constant temperature and never touched. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I've been some fucking cellars, some people that just will fucking annihilate anything that I even think I know. That have some vineyards and some vintners out in France that, I learned a lot of my shit from these guys. And these guys are like opening up their cellars in the summer to let fucking heat in because they believe that their bottles and every one of them is like every goddamn thing else in this universe. It needs light and breath and breathe, the good, the bad. If you really want this shit to truly age properly, that's what it needs to be. So, and there's a hell of a lot of people that believe in that, and a hell of a lot of lambic brewers, I think, that would go along with those thoughts too, to some degree. You're seeing even, and what's really being scary now is, I don't know if you heard about this shit in the wine world. You guys hear about this fucking cork, man, where shit doesn't age for 15 or 20 years or some shit like that?
Synthetic cork?
I guess, but the aging process isn't starting. Is that good or bad? Think about that.
It depends on, frankly, when they're packaging their stuff.
Yeah, but this is where we're going in the human race with all this technology and shit. Like,
It was in a total different variable,
yeah, and it's like
an unknown variable.
I've got Armand, from G Fontaine. Everyone knows that guy. He was down here. The quote I said about things. You need some of the bad shit to make things good. Well, that came directly from him down in the cellar. I worship everything that comes out of that dude's mouth, but he hit the nail on the head. Imagine having something that doesn't age 15, 20 years. When's that going to stop? And it's great to be able to do that, but kind of scary to think that could be the way everything eventually goes. Because let's face it, that shit happens. There's very little of us doing this on this scale, or even half or a third of this scale. Imagine how little it's going to be then. That art goes bye-bye now. You look at your daughter going to public school. My daughter's like, your handwriting's so beautiful, Dad. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's beautiful. What do you mean? It's cursive. They don't teach us that in school anymore. I'm like, are you kidding me? Well, they don't teach cursive. Guess what? Our little clique of beer drinkers that we think is so big is actually fragile as fuck. And I'm going to tell you right now, this stuff and this art and, these people home cellaring and stuff, you hope it survives. You hope, this, but man, with all this new technology and crap coming out, this hands-on stuff, the stuff that's bad for us and makes it good, we could be losing that. Kind of creepy. Imagine not having a choice.
Yeah.
What happens then when you get a beer, man? Oh yeah, this beer will be fresh now for the next 20 years. Well, there goes your ideas of aging beer.
Yeah, that ruins part of the artistry of the creating of the beer and the packaging of it, the re-fermentation, especially if it's something as.
But if you look at, and we look at this, I mean, we don't want to see the change. We're gonna value. We want to see progression, but still, it gets us nervous. Well, you see with turbidity in IPAs now. I mean, is that going to be the future? Well, you know what? I'll tell you. If everyone who's going to be paying your bills is going to be wanting a turbid fucking ass IPA. Well, I guess if you're going to want to survive, you might have to put one out every now and then, right?
So people will make concessions.
Well, what happens if everyone wants their beers with these caps? There's not going to be a lot of choices out there. So, I mean, you hope the artisans can stay true to what they do, but let's hope that this keeps going, because I'll tell you what, technology is increasing fast as shit. And it's changing things fast. Cheese, you're seeing 100% sterilization now. This shit, that was not possible, folks, a few years back. And this is where we're getting to now. So what we know is beverage and cheese, shit's going bye-bye. When they started making whiskey in America, old lambic, wit beer, you ain't ever getting them lambics back from the 30s and 40s and 50s. The water has changed.
The baseline gets shorter and shorter.
Microflora has changed. Hops have changed. The flavors have changed. You got acid rain and shit on them now. You got fucking microns of fucking radiation coming from Fukushima falling on shit. It's changed. Flavors are going to change. We're in a golden age right now. I've been trying to say it for years, proclamating this shit like an apocalyptic warning. We're in the golden age, folks. This is about as good as it's going to get, because you know what? There'll be some better quality but it'll be less and less innovation out there because the resources are getting less and less pure. You can't go out and make an oak barrel now like you could when it was first generation oak. That shit's been chopped and is gone. Them days of making butterscotch whiskeys, that oak is gone. Charleston wood is gone. Well, guess what? All that wood making all them lambics, all them wines, all that wood's changing too. It's been chopped. You're on 4th, 5th, 6th generation. Nutrients change. All that shit changes. So cellaring might not be such a bad idea at all, but you better drink and you better enjoy what you got now, because you know what? It's changing fast. Very, 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 very fast. You're going to be better off, and we all know this, brewing at home and making wine and shit, but if you can do it yourself, that's the best way to do it. You get the best results.
Well, maybe.
Well, once you learn what to do, yeah.
I have had a few that are not so awesome.
But to get back what you were saying about what you had in your basement, I've even heard stories of people who live in apartments in Los Angeles, keeping their beers in styrofoam coolers or something like that in a closet in the center of their house, and able to age beers just as well as somebody who has a perfect root cellar that stays at a consistent temperature. And it's a matter, but they do age faster because it is slightly a higher temperature. So a beer that might, say, have peaked in 5 years in the basement is going to peak in 3 years in your closet, but you can still keep it and still enjoy the process. Now, if you're going to be aging it for like 20 years, you're going to run into problems. But for some of your stouts, barley wines, things like that, you can do it in your house if you don't have a basement with very good success.
The problem with that is, and again, when you get at the top level of the cellaring is that you're going to realize that all data will not make sense in this because of several things. You're going to drink a beer and be like, well, fuck, it's past its prime. And then you're just going to be like opening it up 2 years later and be like, oh, wait, these beers, like, I don't know how to tell you that they do make a comeback. And that's the thing. So, you're right on the fact that, yes, different conditions will certainly age beers quicker. And that'd be interesting. That'd be certainly interesting to be able to do some testing with that sort of deal. But ultimately, it's really hard to figure out. I mean, you can certainly get, as was mentioned earlier, you can certainly get a general idea in about 6 months whether a beer is going to be somewhat serviceable or not. But once you get into that 5, 8, 10-year range, it gets fucking weird, man. Rochefort, Chimay, Panapot. I mean, I've had Panapot where I'm just like, man, that's fucking oxidized, dude, and it's never gonna come back. And then it gets a sour funkiness. Or there was fucking Brett at some point hiding in that I never detected, and here it's like you can't explain it. And as being a cellarer, this is kind of the romance of cellaring for me. And that's why I like to be out in this little fucking place out in the middle of Level, Maine. I don't want to know necessarily scientifically what the fuck is happening, if there is. You know what I mean?
Science doesn't exist in Level, Maine.
Well, I live this shit. You know what I mean? And I need to be part of it, and it's the most important thing with cellaring is caring about what you're doing. But the drinking part of it, that's just, I mean, that's going to come out in the end, whether you do or not, whether you know anything about what the fuck you're talking about or not. But, and that's just one part of it. But at the end of it, you do have to have, product available, and you just really do need to give a damn about what you're doing. You need to treat those beers with a hell of a lot of respect and inventory them in the back of your head. You can, like you said, put them under a blanket, put them under tarp, put them in a cellar. That's fine, but know where they're at. Keep them in mind. As I think everyone has mentioned in this table, including yourself, Amanda, today, is try them every once in a while. Have enough inventory to try them and see what the potential is.
So, if I'm doing a quick, if I'm saying, okay, these are some things you should try. One, you should definitely buy a number of a beer, try it fresh, and then have some to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And try it, consistently over years, and try it with the new batch of that beer that came out, so you can kind of start gauging if you have a decent sensory memory, to remember what it was beforehand, what it is now as you've tried it as a year old, and what the fresh batch is like.
Or write it down. I tend to write down. Because I forget stuff, so I write everything down. I couldn't tell you what a beer tasted like a year ago, so I write it down. I just write down what I tasted, how it is, and then when I taste it a year later, I reread what I wrote and I write it down again. That's just how
why
I.
People love.
You guys up for one more beer?
Please.
Yeah.
It's just another way for you to jot down efficiently, because you're obviously limited when you're using an app like that, but to efficiently jot down some tasting notes to give you something to look back on to start accessing those memories again. And also sometimes I have trouble just remembering what I have and have not tried. I mean, I have days like this where someone wants to bring out, Thomas Hardy, and I forget what vintage it was. I just remember, the depth of it, paired with something else, and like that blend, so there's a lot, and there's also your palate and your set and setting, your mindset that day, that can really affect the way you're perceiving flavors and what you think is going to happen in the future. So it's a very participatory thing. Drink with friends, drink with people who you think know way more than you. Drink with people who don't know anything, because they're blank canvases, and some people are just naturally good at this stuff, good at talking.
I find myself when I'm trying a beer and I'm not getting good descriptions for myself, I will go on to Beer Advocate and look to see what other people have written about that beer. And then as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, I taste that, or I don't really taste that, but it does remind me more of this. And that gives you a sense too of what you're tasting is. I mean, you can
develop a language
for
what you're actually experiencing.
You can read some garbage on there that's just like, I don't know what the heck this guy was drinking. But then sometimes it's like, wow, no, that person interpreted it the exact same way. But that's also what it is. It's an interpretation of how the beer hits your tongue. Even from day to day, it can be different, but it's a very personal experience. And if you're not if you're not willing to take the time to sit down and enjoy it over the course of an hour, because even if you serve it at 45 degrees, at the end of the hour, it's going to be 65 degrees, and the flavors are going to be completely different.
The carbonations run off.
And
it's allowed other things
it
come
just
forward.
feels different on the tongue. It tastes different. You get more depths, different flavors, and that's stuff to note down too. Write down everything you experience with the beer, and then you can go back and reread it as you're drinking it again, and it gives you an idea of what you're doing and how you're doing it.
That's actually how the Great Beer Adventure got started. It was a blog, and we did that. My husband and I would write down what we were drinking, and it has now morphed into this podcast. But it started right upstairs at the bar here at Ebenezer's. So it's kind of the birthplace
As
of
it
this
did
podcast.
for a lot of people, like a lot of people, heard about this place and, came out and actually experienced it, and then really were open to the suggestion of cellared beer, of very engaging beer, something that's outside of your comfort zone. That's why I'll always I'm a fairly picky eater, but I try to be really good about always going to beer dinners and allowing myself to be open to what the chef and the brewers think pair well, what resonates, what contrasts, what ends up creating a whole new flavor profile. That's part of the fun, and being open to these things is what's going to surprise you and what's going to keep you searching and moving forward, with this stuff, because there's so much out there, and there's so many people that are doing interesting things and finding new flavor combinations. So go enjoy them, and talk about it.
And don't necessarily be afraid to buy beers that are mass-produced, off-the-shelf stuff that you can just find almost any time. I think Weyerbacher's barley wine, Blithering Idiot, that's a great one to age. It ages really well. As you said, Bigfoot, you have Bigfoot in your cellar. Bigfoot, I've heard people drinking Bigfoots back into the late 80s, early 90s when they first started coming out with it, and still drinking very, very well as a beer because it was stored properly. So, you don't have to be afraid that you have to go out and buy these $30, $40, $50 bottles of beer. You can buy 6-packs for $10, $15 that will age very, very well.
And they're always available. Being able to find a vintage 1050 is silly. People don't think to do that because that beer's around all the time. But it already drinks really well, but it can get an extra depth of flavor. It can get a little bit of fruit as it oxidizes. You get a little bit more of a savory note to that deep, deep chocolate and that char of a nice espresso. There's stuff that we ignore all the time that's right there. And, it's just waiting patiently for you to try it and for you to share it with your friends.
So, buy a lot, drink often, share
Absolutely
with friends.
drink.
Make friends,
Yeah,
make friends, because that's the easiest way to start trying new things and
The
things
more
that are
guinea
outside.
pigs you can bounce it off.
More guinea pigs, more people who are bringing something to the table, proverbially and literally. There's other people who are going to be able to have a little bit of a better vocabulary helping express, certain things, like stuff that they're more familiar with that you're not, and you can kind of share in that, and that group mind thing kind of happens,
Trying to find that special beer, man.
Spin one of these fucking bottles.
It's right over there. It's the dusty one.
And then also respect the
Pepe,
beer.
dude.
So whether that means put it in a cool, dry place if you have that available, or at least making those kind of arrangements for the beer and giving it half a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I keep my cellar is technically in my parents' basement. It's 20 minutes away from where I live, so if I get have a little too much and I feel like going and just grabbing something haphazardly, I can't do it. It's a way. I can't. If I'm going to do it, I have to be calculated. I got to make all right, I'm going to make a trip to my parents' house and grab this. So I'm kind of lucky in that sense that I can keep it off my own premises, and I can't just be like, oh, I want to try this. Woo!
Even frankly, just labeling box 1 through 6 or whatever you're doing, and having an inventory on an Excel sheet or something that tells you what's in each box.
Dude, it smells like
so you're not looking at it every single day. Putting a nice cellar up on display is really nice. That it's aesthetically pleasing, but you're also looking at these beers all the time, and if you want to develop them and age them, you're going to start coveting them. Well, you're like, oh, I can't have that yet, but I might. And then you have a friend who's never tried it, and you've had one beverage and very excited, and you're like, oh, we're totally going to drink this, and they don't like it at all, and you don't even remember doing it. You know, it's a real bummer. We've all had to make that mistake before, I think.
I mean, I've definitely brought stuff back and had that mistake, but it is too, like he said, you start coveting these beers, and you get to a place where you're like, I don't want to drink this yet. I don't want to drink this yet. And then you look and it's like, well, I've had this for 4 or 5 years. I really need to drink this, but you still, it's like, I'm not ready to do it yet. And every so often you're going to have a beer that's going to go too far, but also like Chris said, there's always that potential that it could come back
take a
too.
180 again, yeah.
So it depends, but I would say that overall a lot of the mass-produced commercial beers, probably once they've reached their peak, they're going to go. They're going to be gone, especially stouts and things like that. But you never know. I mean, beer is a living, breathing creature that can surprise you.
One of the gentlemen that was supposed to join us tonight but was unable to actually has a website with like a spreadsheet on it of.
Yeah.
Is that Zoidberg? Nadada?
No.
I did not see his.
Tim?
No.
No?
It was a different Tim. And he sent a link to us while we were starting to talk about this, and it was crazy, like, what people will do. Do you have an inventory like that, Chris?
Fuck no. Well, the insurance company does. No.
I do, but that's because, once again, I don't remember when I buy things. So if you need to, by all means, look online. You can find examples of cellar sheets that you can that people have come up with, and you can create your own. But I mean, I write down what it is, where I got it, when it was bottled, when I cellared it, and just that sort of information to try to
Goddamn.
keep in my head
Yeah.
when
Oh my God.
when I got
every
it.
Every few months, I try to go through everything all over again and delete what I've actually consumed and find the ones that are stuck in the back of the shelves that I didn't want to look at for another year or so. This is jam. Like, it just smells like straight.
Oh,
It really does.
my Lord, did you try this, Amanda? Yeah.
I have not tried.
Dude, you need to get your paws on this.
Yeah.
We brought
Oh
this
my
back from
goodness.
Belgium ourselves, by the way, and I'll tell you right now, this didn't sit in a shipping container. This stuff is legit. Try this.
So wait, you said that you actually have your cellar insured?
Yes, and it's the most painful process.
Yep.
It's awful. Because the problem with insuring a cellar is that the insurance company, first of all, insurance company is like a beer cellar, what, or even a cellar in general.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah, we're dragging this guy, so.
You need a beer-centric lawyer.
Yeah. So, their biggest concerns,
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
their biggest concerns was what we were getting insured wasn't being drank. That was the big one. And that's, so basically, we have people that come in here and they're like, is this for sale? Even if it was for sale, I wouldn't sell it because the insurance policy, just having to manipulate that. I mean, we're talking 3 years of inventorying to get everything in here and evaluated was a nightmare.
So when you do drink out of your cellar, do you have it from a different part of the cellar, or?
Yes. So the state of Maine basically made us split the cellar up. So we have Ebenezer's inventory, and the official state of Maine's inventory, which is taxable, is in that first door. That's why there's walls. And then from here on out, this personal party place, which is where we're at right now. And so yeah, we're in deep into the depths of the dungeon now. But so it's all corridored off for sure.
It's really interesting. I never even thought about what that must be like.
That balance, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we have a very tasty beer in front of us, and we are coming to the end of our show. We have had some great beers today, but if there was like...
Well, the end of what we're recording.
Right.
What you guys get to hear at home.
Yeah.
Drool, by the way.
So, if you had like, I don't know if whale of a beer is quite right, but what is that one like
The white
beer
whale.
that,
Yeah.
not necessarily the whale though, not the one you're looking for, but the one that you had. What was the best beer that you aged and had of your whole cellaring thus far?
That I've had the balls to open
Yeah.
would be was we had Alan Sprints here and Sean Paxton at the same time. Sean Paxton at the dinner, we had Alan Sprints here. And oddly enough, some people were actually bitching about the $55 price, but we had Hair the fucking Dog Dave down here with Alan Sprints, with Sean Paxton, with me, with my wife, and about 25 other people. And I gotta tell you what, that shit was worth every fucking drop. I mean, there's some. I mean, there's that. There's the 75 centiliters of Earth Monk. Anybody who hears that, who had the original Earth Monk in the wine shed, will be like, "Yeah, Chris, you're goddamn right." That is an amazing beer. We have over there again. If I had the balls to open it, 2005 Panapot Grand Reserva. Forget the 33 centiliter bottles, the 75 centiliter bottles. That is by far the most fucking underrated beer in the world. That is one of the greatest examples of barrel-aged beer in the world. I mean, it is absolutely, you will lick the fucking glass clean. It is so good. You know, I mean, it just goes on and on. I mean, there's, you know, some Cantillons that are, you know, if you get a good bottle of Cantillon from like 96, 92, somewhere in there, those are great. Some Driefontaines are great. I mean, all those, I mean, they're all just right there. But, you know, there's those bottles of beer. Forget the fucking price tag, but I might as well say it. But when you get into those beers that are about $2,000 a pop on the secondary market, you know what I mean? The crazy Cantillons, the fucking Hair of the Dog Daves, all that shit. You know, you get them, you're like, I just spent a fortune on you, pop them. And some of those beers, like, wow, I'd pay that again. You know, I mean, some of them are just like, this is bullshit hype. But some of those beers, I'm going to tell you, the original Framboose, which you see hiding over there, which is probably the world's most sought-after beer, bar none. I mean, that beer, I mean, it was the highest rated beer in the world, and no one ever knew it. It just wound up in this conglomerate. When shit started getting rating, that was the one. Boom. And that shit was legendary, man. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think me and Ed made it into sorbet one time or something like that. But it was, yeah, and fucking ate the shit.
Liquid nitrogen?
With liquid nitrogen,
Yeah,
exactly.
I remember this tale.
But, yeah, man, yeah, we did that with 110 people. That was Christoph, and we had a chef from Johnson & Wells working for us at the time who helped us do it. But, yeah, I mean, that stuff, I mean, you even had the Thomas Hardy's tonight. I mean, talking about, I mean, we had a good bottle, and I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, when you drink shit like this, I mean, there's no question that aging beer works, I mean, better than fucking wine.
So that's gonna be really hard to beat.
You should have done him last.
He just stepped up.
I know. I almost did that. But not my place.
But, you know, I mean, that's what I get paid to do. I mean, this pub, you got 3 places in the world that are known extensively for Cellar. You got the Akarat, you got the Culminator, and you got us. And when I'm talking about comprehensive, I mean comprehensive. And when people are reviewing or rating their 25,000th beer or even their 30,000th beer, you know, from Rate Beer, Beer Advocate, they're going to go to one of these 3 places in the world to drink. And you better, as a publican, I mean, this is the last bastion of hope. You know, we've got Brewery X that brings their whole brewery in. You know, several of these guys every year to research this sort of thing, exactly what we're doing right now. And they do the deal, and this is what we do. And we try to do it as educated as we can and with as little science as possible.
You, before I moved to this side, you weren't actually in the room when I said this, but Great Beer Adventure started here at Ebenezer's.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and you taught my husband and I most of what we know about beer, so thank you very much, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's our pleasure. And, you know, we're just here to help the beer movement get along. You know, you got dudes here like Ed, these guys here. I mean, everyone, you doing what you do. You know, that's what this shit's about. You know, it's, to put a long story short, actually having some real skin in the game is it's a pleasure to be with you guys, because you guys obviously do have real skin in the game, unlike a lot of fucking people. You know what I mean? And it's the truth, man. I mean, there's so many people that just want to get to Mount Everest. They want to drink the best, and then they're going to move on to something else. It's very few people that want to go to the ups and downs of this shit to really reach the peaks and really understand it. You know, I tell people, man, just because you fucking drink beer for 5 or 6 years, you're just getting it.
man, you need to drink another 5 or 6 years at a fucking high level to really then fucking know it. You know what I mean? Bob Marley once said about reggae, fucking other singers. They know it, but they can't do it. And it's the same thing with fucking beer and wine and all that shit. It's just drink, 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 and drink some more. That's how it's gonna happen. If you don't fucking drink, you're not gonna know shit. You know, you can read all you want, you can identify flavors, but that dude over there drinking 5, 10 beers to your one is just pounding the knowledge and really knows them. And he's drinking those beers not because he's out there just trying to learn a bunch of information. He's doing it because he fucking loves it. And these are the people that you see come out ahead in this game, are the people that love it. Because if they love it, they're going to do a hell of a lot better job at it than someone who fucking doesn't. That's for damn sure.
And advocate for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so does anybody else want to tell us theirs, or are we just gonna?
I don't have a story that great by any means.
I don't know that anybody in the world has a story.
I forgot the question. Like,
Your best beer was the original
best beer.
question.
Oh man, that's kind of an impossible question, to be completely honest. There have been some, like this right now is one of my favorite beers. It's been a beer that I've long wanted to try but never been able to. You know, so like this right here is one of my things. Being able to be in my buddy's garage when he has 4 beers on tap and having a kind of his version of an Ode Bruin out of a good 59-gallon oak barrel blended with his Belgian Strong. Like the day that I hit the ratio right in that room, I've never recreated it. I'll probably never do it again. But I just had bliss for that moment and that realization that this stuff can be so engaging. And it's so much further.
Beer fucking drinking.
It's so much more than just drinking it, and there's so much more to learn than all the work you've already put in. Like, so just keep enjoying.
Yeah. Beer drinking. Yep.
The whole reason I even got into this, and some people are gonna criticize me for it, but was Goose Island's Bourbon County brand stout. That was the first, I bought it, I saw that it was being released, had never even heard of it, and I went and picked up 2 4-packs of it, and it said right on the bottle, can develop for up to 5 years. That was the first time I ever even knew that you could age beer. So I started getting more and more into it. I'm like, I'll keep a bottle of this for a year and see what happens. And then the next Thanksgiving, I tried one, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredibly better. So I made sure to get even more, as much as I could get my hands on the year, and that year, and I just
Really good stuff. Yeah.
that's how I got into cellaring. Was just I was like, I didn't even know it existed, and then I started reading more and more and more, and yeah, I probably have some. I wouldn't necessarily say they're white whales or even necessarily whales, but I have some bottles that I'm really looking forward to drinking in a few years or next year, next week maybe if I really wanted to. So yes, there's some people who like to chase the white whale. You don't have to. You don't have to go out and spend a ton of money to see changes and enjoy what you're doing. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. You don't have to feel like you have to keep up with people who have access to, or like he said, spend $2,000 on a bottle. I mean, I would love to be able to buy a $2,000 bottle of beer and be
do it with 20
blown
people.
away.
Exactly.
Do it with 20 people, and that's how you do it.
Yep.
Yeah, you can do it that way, and there's lots of other ways to do it through raffling and stuff like that. You can get lucky hitting a raffle on Facebook or some one of those private clubs or whatever, bro. Or big groups, man, where you get fucking 100 people together and you have huge tastings, which we never do here at Ebenezer's, but I hear it happens some places.
Did you have any last one you'd like to?
I mean, my favorite beer is the one I look forward to next. Basically,
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be. Is the whole exploratory theme we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some great experiences with beers. Absolutely, like 1973 West Federland green bottle that we mixed with fresh. Getting back to waking up a beer again. Not to name names, but we did a blend up here that was, it was sensational. It was amongst friends. It was, one of the best experiences I've had with beer.
And the reason why we can't name names is because we have a lot of breweries and a lot of people that come up here, a lot of people that we can we're consultants as well, besides all this shit. And when we consult with people, it has to remain anonymous. It's one of the deals that we have to do, so we can't be like name dropping fucking
But
blah,
I mean-
blah, 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 blah. But yeah, we get a lot of visitors here.
Getting back to not naming names, we friggin' there was blends with Jägermeister and Koningshoven Quad and shit like that. It was like just
Unbelievable
obscure-
shit with some unbelievable
It
fucking
was-
minds, man, in this business. Just
was
incredible
just-
stuff that was happening in this bar. Like, just wow.
Things you wouldn't even think of combining together.
But stuff like, I mean, we're talking like $2,000 whiskeys with crazy aged stuff. Just, I mean, amazing. I mean, there's dudes down here that were blending like $20,000 worth
Expanding
of
your
bourbon
horizons.
with, stouts. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating with those numbers. That was probably on the goddamn low end. But I mean, just unbelievable, and doing these experiments and some of these things. It's amazing, and the reason why it happens is it happens because of the everyday drinker. Sometimes we have to get these extreme resources. We don't have the money for them. So we have to go to these people that got these resources organically. And is there someone up there?
Yeah, Ed's wife
Oh,
walking
yeah.
across the-
And we have to get these resources from people that have the resources because they got them organically. And they're not out to make, $2,000 a bottle. They're like, hey, man, we'll hook you up, bro. It's for this. And if I ever need a favor, I'm going to come knocking for real. And that's how it happens. And, Ed and I have both been very lucky to be out here and see some pretty amazing situations with some pretty amazing people. Yeah. Maybe.
So I think my biggest takeaway, we're gonna wrap it up, but I think one of the things that I've known a lot of the stuff that you guys have been saying, but I think I've been kind of timid with my beer. I've been afraid to do the blending on my own. So I think that's the biggest thing that I'm gonna walk away with is to, not be like so scared. That kind of thing. Thank you all so much. It's just like opening
Fuck,
boxes and
Yep.
opening it.
Blasting off of the food, yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll be back again next week. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much to Chris Lively for hosting us, and to all of our cellar dwellers for sharing some of their hints, tips, and tricks. Thank you for joining us on this bonus episode. For show notes and an article with additional tips for the at-home cellarer, head over to greatbeeradventure.com/043. We will return next week with your regularly scheduled show, nice and clean, as we almost always bring it to you. We would like to again thank our sponsor, Oak Hill Beverage, for their support. Be sure to visit oakhillbeverage.com for more information. And if you, our loyal listeners, would like to help support Great Beer Adventure, head over to greatbeeradventure.com/support. You'll be directed to our Patreon account where you can show us the love for as little as $1 an episode. The music throughout today's episode is by Old Etc. out of Biddeford, Maine. To learn more about them, head over to greatbeeradventure.com/music. We have new things headed your way every week and can't wait to share them with you. Special thanks to our behind-the-scenes guru, Dano Pugach. Today's episode was created, produced, and edited by me, Amanda. Thanks for joining us. Have a fabulous day, and we'll see you next time. Cheers. Want to know more? Be sure to find us on Instagram at Great Beer Women. If you haven't done so already, be sure to head over to greatbeeradventure.com/subscribe to subscribe. That way, you'll be the first to know when a new episode goes live. Also, don't forget to tell your friends about us. A small party is fun, but a huge party is extraordinary. Let's get more people knowing about beer in the great state of Maine. Great Beer Adventure is part of the Great Pint Society.